Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. What you want to talk about? Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, Lisa, Lowe, JT, and friends. Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. What you want to talk about? Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, Lisa, Lowe, JT, and friends.
Lisa, Lowe, JT, and friends. Y'all ready to pick up some conversation? Come on.
Kitchen talk.
Let's talk.
Hello.
Hey, how's everybody going?
Good. How are you doing? Welcome back to the kitchen. Thank you for joining us.
Back in the kitchen, Doc.
Yeah, we're back. Man, I tell y'all, it has been an exhausting past couple of weeks. It's been very, very exhausting.
Man, first, I definitely want to say this first. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. It's not easy, but keep up the good work, man. And this is just the beginning.
But
as you know, it just keeps going on and on and on. After this case, there's another case right now with what's her name? Pamela. I just saw it.
Pamela Turner. Yeah, there's a lot, man.
Hold on.
Difficult.
Y'all just went right in. We ain't even welcome the people, told them who we are, nothing.
Right.
You right. We all out of order.
Diving deep. Let's go, Lisa. Get us right.
Oh my goodness. Welcome to Kitchen Talk, CTC.
Conversations that cook.
Yes. France is here. I'm here. Hopefully JT is on his way. And we have attorney Adner, and I'm gonna mess this last name up.
Marcelin,
but you all right.
Marcelin, back in the kitchen with us. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you can see, those who are watching, they ready just to go ahead. We ain't gotta warm up the oven or nothing. We ain't gotta preheat. None of that. None of that. So we're gonna dig right in. And my thought is this. When I was thinking about doing this show, I thought about Rodney King actually came right to my mind.
Right.
Literally 30 years almost to the day.
Yeah.
30 years almost to the day. And here we are with not just cops being filmed beating a man, but literally killing a man. And there's question about justification. 30 years, y'all.
Right.
30 years.
Lisa,
so it escalated. It escalated from beating to killing.
And I you know what I feel, and I keep sharing this, is that policies are not put in place when things like this happen. Today they just passed the gun law. Yeah, we have the prayers. We got all the prayers. Thank you for the money too. But we need to make some policies, put some policies in place so that this doesn't continue to happen.
Sure.
Again, it's just another case is going to come up, and then we got to go to court again, and we got to get the word out again about somebody who claims that they were doing their job.
Absolutely. And I would just, start off with this, like this particular case has been different. And I think that if America doesn't wake up to the genocide of Black men after this case, you begin to wonder, what will it take? I think, and you've seen this term coined around the news agencies, that America is on trial. This case is going to determine. I mean, you have almost every bit of evidence that you would want in a case like this. There's no question. You're not arguing sides. You're not arguing about what happened and what didn't happen. You can actually watch it on video from start to end. And so, we're hopeful that the jury is going to get it right. But we never forget cases like Eric Garner, where we watched the police choke him over cigarettes and justice wasn't done there. The officers didn't make it to court. I think this is a major first step in at least the officer made it to court this time, because many times the family they don't even get a day in court. We're hoping it there, but immediately, as soon as this case made it to court, you have the playbook, and they pull one straight out of the playbook, and that is, now we begin the assassination of George's character, bringing up old and charges that was irrelevant to the situation and had nothing to do with the situation. Trying to confuse the jury, by putting information out there suggesting that it was a drug addiction that killed him and the usage of drugs that killed them, where, you have individuals that testified that, hey, it's nothing to be ashamed about. There are millions of Americans that suffer from drug dependency and drug issues and are struggling to make a better life for themselves. That doesn't mean that they do not deserve a quality of life, a respect of life and their liberty, and they should be treated no less than anyone else. But it just seems as if it's the playbook that if we demean your character, if we reduce your significance and importance to our community, then that gives the justification to the officer. Like I said, the only thing that was excessive on May 25th, 2020, was the officer's knee on his neck, George Floyd's neck. That was it. We're watching a murder and then we're going to trial on a murder about a murder that we watched that take place. What else do they need? But hopefully, I'm confident that the prosecution team, which is made up of a lot of volunteer attorneys, that is made up of several state attorneys, and Keith Ellison leading the Attorney General's team, I think they're doing a phenomenal job at presenting the evidence. And I hope that the jurors, get it right at the end of this circumstance. And this will be the beginning of trial number 1 of 2, because the family will be right back again for the other individual officers that stood by and did nothing, and they'll be going to trial also for their role in the murder of George Floyd.
I was wondering that as well, because again, I was just telling Lisa that, your job is to protect and serve. And here it is, you're not doing that. And one of my key takeaways from this case thus far is that their co-workers, the good cops, are coming out to saying this was wrong, right? So it's not about blue line, it's not about black line, red line, whatever other lines that you have. This is about right and wrong, and what they saw was wrong. No matter how you try to dice it, cook it, turn it around, it was clearly murder.
It was wrong. So do you think, in your opinion, Adner, do you think that, and I keep going back to this because there was a trial with the Rodney King incident beating, and it was, they were acquitted. It was like they did nothing wrong. So what kind of precedence did that set, saying that they are above the law? To me, that's what it kind of seemed like.
I think it's this whole theory that, when you're looking at the cops, they get this enjoyment of qualified immunity. Everyone treats law enforcement as if they are above the law. And I think that we have to hold law enforcement accountable. It's not to say that you don't want enforcement in your community, but we want law enforcement that's going to protect and serve, not kill and, harm our people. And that's not an unreasonable ask. In these situations, I think that, we have gone so long of holding law enforcement above the law that even in 2021, it difficult. It's a difficult concept for individuals to grasp that law enforcement could be capable of doing something. But I'll go back to the opening lines of Attorney Jerry when he opened this trial. He said, "You can believe your eyes. You can believe your eyes. You're watching the murder of George Floyd." You know, because I don't think anybody was prepared to say or see an officer. And I could only imagine, you know, what would have happened if that young bystander didn't record that video. What would have happened? You know, you had a EMT off duty saying, "Hey, I'm an EMT. You're blocking his airways. Let me help him." No response. You have
but not only that, I got to stop you, Doc, because not only did they give her no response, they told her to move back. Here is somebody that was there to help, and you told her move back.
Yeah.
But what about?
Go ahead, bro.
But what about the police officers that stood there and watched? I understand that there's that thing that they call the blue wall. I've watched enough Chicago PD to understand a little bit about something. But the thing about it is, I understand that they are there to back each other up. But I'm sorry, brother. There is no way that you should be able to stand there and watch a fellow officer commit murder. I do not care what anybody says. You have the authority to say, "Hey, yo, that's enough. You cannot do this. You cannot kill a man in cold blood like this." At least that's my
you know, and we're going to deal with those three officers. They have their particular trials coming up in the second segment of the trial, and due to COVID, you have this unusual breaking up of the charges, and these officers are being tried separately, and it's very weird. But you know, I go back to, you know, the initial day, the first day of this trial, going in with the family, and I can tell you, in 13 years of working at Ben Crump Law, that was the most difficult day for me in my career. Watching the family watch their loved one, many of them for the first time, have their loved one murdered. And then to initially think and be told that it was 8 minutes and 46 seconds, but after thorough review, finding out that your loved one suffered for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And you know, you heard the testimony today of the expert witness, the pulmonologist, about how that caused George to suffer. And you know, it's a traumatic experience for his family. You know, they're grieving, but having to push through that grief because they know if they don't stand up for George and demand justice and advocate for justice, a lot of these cases get swept under the rug. And I mean, I've had a great time being in Minneapolis. I've gotten to sit down and break bread with the protesters. I've gotten to sit down and break bread with those affected in the community, the business owners that are affected in the community. This has impacted a lot of individuals. And what has also shed light on is how there's always this follow-up work that must be done after each of these circumstances and situations that we don't address. A lot of the citizens there spoke to me and said, their concerns was with their city council and addressing the violence and addressing the lack of economic opportunity in their streets. They have desires to say that we don't want to move out of this neighborhood because it's bad or it's high with crime. We want to see more officers that care. We want to see more support. We want the streets paved. We want lights on the street. We want the streets just painted. And you're wondering, why can't these changes happen, and what is going on with the elected officials that are elected to represent these individuals? And as you go from shooting to shooting, you start seeing the patterns of is our government failing the citizens that they're supposed to be serving as well? Because it is great. And this settling this case, I think at a historic rate of $27 million, largest settlement ever for Minnesota history. I do think that makes a statement, but I think the bigger statement that needs to be made is, okay, now that you have somewhat made an effort to compensate the family because they'll never be able to bring their loved one back, and that's never able to compensate them. What are you doing now for the citizens of your own community? How are you addressing those needs to make sure that 3 or 4 months down the line there isn't another George Floyd? Because I tell you, the saddest thing I saw was after visiting the memorial after his death, someone else was shot there and murdered. Just a couple of weeks later. So not only is there now the George Floyd Memorial to your left, but to your right, there is a memorial of another person who ended up getting shot and killed in that same exact spot. Senseless violence. So if we're going to break that pattern, you have to make sure that we're providing opportunities, that people don't feel like they need to rob and do things. They can make a good living. And again, I'll also, just before this point, and I'll stop, you'll address the point that is critical in this conversation. A lot of people was like, well, what about this counterfeit, money, which doesn't make a difference anyway. Right. But I asked the question, who said that George Floyd made a counterfeit bill? Who said that he didn't go to a store next door and pick that, and get that money, and now he tried to shop? That was an unproven theory. So for you to make an assumption, just based on someone's look, their status in life, and say, oh, you tried to pass a counterfeit bill, it wasn't there. And just go back and just try to wrap your head around that somebody lost their life because of a counterfeit $20 bill.
Yeah.
Nobody has said anything about that.
I mean, it's an afterthought at this point, Even
the shop clerk said, I didn't see a counterfeit. You know what I mean? And more than anything, if you're a police officer, you have different things to check in your car to see if this bill is real or not. Two, if it is a fake bill, it should have went to the feds automatically. This should have been a federal issue at this point because there's fake currency being passed around. That has not been proven or has not been shown. Again, this is just straight up murder. But you made up a great point that this is a traumatic situation, not just for the family, but for all who have witnessed that. I mean, everybody who have seen even a glimpse of this, it has affected you traumatically because we've been seeing this over and over again.
Right.
What do we do to get ourselves right? But more importantly, you said this as well, I brought it up earlier, we need to do a better job in electing our officials, public officers, from the superintendent of schools all the way up to the mayor, the governor, the senators, because policies need to be put in place so that this doesn't happen. Think about it. Lisa, you just brought this to me, and I'm like, wow, we're still talking about the same issue. After all these years, we're still talking about a Black man being
murdered,
armed, demasculated, all of that on TV, and everybody can see it, right?
I think it goes even one step before policy. It's common decency in treating a human being. Correct. I think that the police all over the country should take note that when somebody says, I can't breathe, you should not take that as a joke. If someone picks up the phone and said there's a bomb at the airport, I promise you they're not going to take it as a joke. The airport's getting evacuated and we will check it and deal with it later. So we need to take, when someone says I can't breathe and that they're having respiratory issues, we need to immediately take that seriously.
It's funny how they choose.
We counted that. We counted. I don't know how many times.
For a second, I have to stop for a second because it's funny how they choose what to take serious, right? You just had this mass murder. A guy just killed all these people. Let's go back to I'm killing all these people in a church. The people are going to pray. No heart hurting nobody. A young man with no sense goes in and kill him. You arrest him without a problem, bring him to Burger King, have him have a meal, but you have this individual, number one, you have this individual crying out he can't breathe. You know what I wonder? Why they did, why, and again, it's the trauma behind this. Why was it so hard? Once they had him handcuffed, put him in the car. What was stopping them from doing that? Why did they have to keep him on the ground? He's not hurting anybody. He's not resisting arrest. Why not just take him, put him in the car, and then deal with the crowd? Because they're trying to bring that as an issue now too. Oh, the crowd was affecting their judgment, and everybody in the crowd are just standing, videotaping. Nobody's rushing. They're pleading. They're pleading.
Asking them to stop.
A lot of people watched Injustice that day. I think about Donald, the MMA fighter who had extensive experience in MMA fighting, and he's saying, hey, that maneuver that you're using to put your knee on his neck is blocking his airway. He says that several times, but I tell everybody, go back and watch the video and start counting how many times someone says, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. Then you start calling out for your mother who is deceased. Then you say, tell my children I love them. You just see the life falling out of somebody. And it just bothered me that whole day, and I'm just saying it's already traumatic enough, but imagine watching that with his children, his sisters, his brothers, just sitting there. And there's nothing that you can do. There was no warning that this was coming up. And it's just like, there it was. And that was the moment. And so, I'm very proud of this family for the things that they have done, the way that they've comported themselves throughout this entire situation, dealt with everything as gracefully and as peacefully as possible. They have started several foundations that are benefiting the community, giving back to the community despite their loved one being taken. They're giving back to that same community, and still it's just like nothing that they do brings that sense of closure and peace. No. And you just hope and you pray that the jury gets it that way. The defense hasn't been crossing a lot of witnesses. They've just been moving on. You've heard from, Derek Chauvin's chief of police that says, you were completely unnecessary and uncalled for. You heard the lieutenant come up and say the same thing. I don't know how many others, I don't know how much more testimony that we need. I mean, hopefully, once all is said and done, the jury reaches the right conclusion and that, he gets the maximum time, because I think he has caused a lot of pain, not only locally, but internationally as well.
So here's a question, and I don't know if I read this, but because I haven't been following, but did I hear them try to use the fact that he was saying I can't breathe as a means of resistance? They were saying he was resisting because he said I can't breathe.
Absolutely. And again, I think, I don't know what it is about humanity that individuals take that as a joke. I think it is nothing to even entertain. I think officers get in the point where they get so accustomed. And I used to be a police explorer. That was going to be my chosen field in my profession. And I remember the chief of police at our Stewart Police Department would always tell the officers before they go out on duty, he said, you can never treat a situation as routine, because you never know when that one situation is going to change. And he said that to the officers to tell them, don't step out into a situation thinking that you know everything and that everything's going to go as routine as you always do it. And I think that this is what those officers got into that pattern of doing. oh, you know, he's resisting like everybody else and someone's having a medical emergency. And because you're so trained and your thought pattern is, oh, I see this all the time, this is just them trying to get away, you don't recognize someone having a medical emergency in front of you. But as we say for their defense, and this defense that they're going to try to put up, we say if you don't believe that 9 minutes and 29 seconds can take your life, we don't need a trial. Why don't you get on your neck and allow someone to put their knee on your neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds?
Yeah.
And let's just see
if you survive.
Let's just see what happened. Yeah.
That's it. That's all that's needed. You know, we don't need to go through no long trial, because again, it's just like, it's insulting to a degree where you watch a murder happen and now you're having to go through a trial to explain what you saw. It's like someone telling you, you saw this with your eyes, but let me explain to you what you think you saw so you didn't see it. It's confusing.
I said the same thing and I felt that way. I really felt like this was a waste of time, taxpayer dollars, and all that other stuff. But I think this trial is needed. And as you stated, we need a trial to set a precedence in terms of we're not having this anymore. I love the fact that you have other officers who are standing up now, including his own boss, who's saying this is wrong, right? So I'm hoping that other districts, other counties, other states start to hear and learn from this and say, okay, we need to make some changes, because this is an issue. As our president stated today, this is more than just something we need to pray about. We need to put some action to it, right?
Absolutely. And I think that when you look at these situations, I think this is something that you take back to your community. I think that we should capitalize. If your city is not having an issue right now with law enforcement in the community, you should take that opportunity to build a stronger bond with your community so that individuals, you know, feel a sense of a genuine connection. But when you have gotten yourself into a situation such as this, and then you're trying to make right with your community doesn't want to deal or work with you. And, you know, I think that the swift action of the police department and getting rid of him in the force and calling it for what it is, murder, said a lot, because and oftentimes you have, you know, city officials and mayors that will be cowards and they'll hide behind the, oh, well, the city's insurance agents told me I better not comment on this because it was cost. And, you know, you really salute those individuals that, you know, really stood up for what was justice. I think Mayor Fry, you have to give him some credit in calling it for what it is. The vice president of the city council, Andrea Jenkins, really been representing the 38th in Chicago neighborhood, which was the street where George Floyd was murdered. I think she was very instrumental in assisting the city. But, you know, when I asked the protesters and those in the community how they felt about her, you know, it was very good. And, you know, this just comes to show that when we put our biases aside, for those that don't know, Andrea Jenkins was the first openly transgendered elected city council person, but having the right people in the right place also assists the family in getting justice that they so need. Because I think that, and I'm speculating at this point, but I think that, you know, when you have someone that can understand what it's like to be Black, understand what it's like to be a Black male, understand what it's like to be discriminated based on any kind of factor, you know, gender, anything like that, it helps them break it down to other individuals that may not have had that experience in life. And so, you know, I really think that, you know, this was such a turning point in our community. And I think that we're at this crossroads of America, what are we going to do? Because I think that particularly African Americans, but minorities are sick and tired of dying, you know, and I think the NAACP adopted a very great theme this year. We're done dying. You know, this is not just going to be, you know, what we stand by and accept it. And again, it's either that we're going to work together to fix it or people are going to fight back.
So when you talk about the trial, and I know we're saying it shouldn't have been, or we have to do it. So is my understanding, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm a theater person, but my understanding is when you're trying to prove murder, it has to be some type of intent proven. Is that right?
Right, and they've laid out a array of charges, and each element that has to be proven. I think the most controversial one that they had out there was third degree, because the judge differed. But then this goes back to voting in election. I think the last time we were on here, we were talking about we need to go out and vote. And again, here's the common day example: the judges that are hearing these cases and hearing these appeals, they were put in by the president. And unfortunately, I'm going to say it, thank God Donald Trump is gone, but there's a lasting effect to all of the judges that he put on the bench.
Correct.
They will stay there for the rest of their lives, and they will rule for the next 10 to 20 years. They will be making the decisions. Our Supreme Court at the United States Supreme Court has now turned and went right now. And so the mindset and the decisions that are coming out of the courts now are changing. And so elections have consequences. I think it's disappointing. It's a disservice when you have more people at a Black Lives Matter rally than actually coming from the Black community and going to go vote. The voting is more important, because we have to go and deal with these judges. Everybody says, I want justice. I want to see justice. Well, the judge that's presiding over the case is someone that's ran and is probably elected. All of the decisions that he makes goes to the Court of Appeals, which are appointed by individuals that you elected. The people sitting on the Supreme Court, either they're put in by their state's governor, or if they're on the U.S. Supreme Court, they're put in by the president, people that you elect. So when you don't vote, we don't get justice. And then I also add this, because I think it was a very unbearable 3 weeks. Jury duty. We need to have that conversation more in our community about jury duty. Stop making excuses about why you can't serve. Don't fall for the traps. I proudly wear Black Lives Matter, but if I can go into a courtroom, and even though I support Black Lives Matter and I support the movement and standing up for equal rights, if I can put all of those biases aside and judge a case by its facts, I am qualified to serve as a juror. What we do, we go into the courtroom and we let either the prosecution or the defense throw out witnesses, because we go in there and we let them frame opinions as if we cannot put our opinions aside and judge things solely on the facts. And we have to stop doing that. We have got to, if I know it may be a little bit difficult, single parents, you have kids and stuff like that, but if you can get a sitter, you might be the person that justice is depending on. And because you're not serving, you leave someone and they're like, well, okay, why is the jury all white? Why is it all female? Why is it all male? Why is it all older people? And something that a lot of people don't know is, when you're entitled to this right to your jury, a jury of your peers, as long as the pool that was called into jury duty was a jury of your peers, who you end up with
might not be your peers.
No, it doesn't matter, but it's fair. Okay, so your right to this jury of your peers is in that jury pool, not who ends up on your jury most times. So I would definitely just encourage everybody, if you get that jury summons, don't make excuses. Try to go. I've been called twice. Unfortunately, they don't pick me, but definitely go, because again, sometimes justice depends on the individuals who are sitting in that box. And right now, there are 12 jurors in that box and 2 alternates, and they will decide this case. The 12 jurors there, and if something happens, the 2 alternates. But it's very important that they will decide this case. And
well, you said a box. Well, again, you're in a box, and there's a box that we have to check, and that box was supposed to be checked when we voted. So again, we advocate this on the show so many times. I mean, we've done so many shows on just voting and the importance of voting, and bringing in people, to help us understand the process of voting. And people just think, well, it's the president we have to vote for, but really it's everybody down the line. This is probably one of the biggest things that I have conversations about, because again, this is just another case at this point.
Right.
And until
And
the
if I can
policies,
add, go ahead.
till we put some policies in place. I forgot the comedian's name who ran for president. He had died last year. But anyways, he said until the responsibility is placed on the officer, until they know that, you know what, every bullet that you put out is important. If you shoot somebody, it's coming out of your pension. It's coming out of your check. It's coming out of it's going to affect your future. It's going to keep happening, right? So we have to put some paper, some pen to paper, and make some changes happen. Like I said, I seriously believe that you will see this again. And until we do something on not just a state level, but on a federal level, on a national level, this will just keep happening, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I also, would just add on to what you just said and just say, when it comes down to our local government elections, those elections have a greater impact on our day-to-day life. I mean, even here in Tallahassee, where we're based out of, I tell everybody, sometimes it makes me sick to my stomach to believe the way that some of the constituents that represent our communities go to that city hall chamber and they vote.
Right.
I would ask Tallahassee, and I put it out there because I stand by the right, not based on who I know. Why do we need a tank? The city just accepted a tank and then authored a memo to say that House Bill 1, which is a bill that is going to attack protesters, charge them with trumped up felonies, and put more people in the criminal justice system, is not good for the city. But when you look at your voting record, you don't practice what you preach. You charge people for standing up for Black Lives Matter. You author an opinion that says Black Lives Matter. But when these charges came down, you were silent. Right. And remember what Dr. King said about people who are silent.
Right.
You're just as worse as the oppressor himself. Right. And you may not be doing the action, but something in you should have a moral duty and a moral obligation to stand up and say it's not right.
Just like those other cops that were just holding them down.
It doesn't. Where does it pop up? Where does it pop up? And so I challenge everybody because, I tell everybody, go to the Blueprint Commission, find out. I think I read in today's paper, Commissioner Jeremy Matlow was speaking to us about a civic center that, my alma mater FSU was putting $20 million in. And then they retracted and reneged on the 20 million. And now they're getting the civic center. And now I'm like, but wait a minute. Okay. The taxpayers are now footing the bill. Why doesn't the taxpayers get a say so on what location is it going to be placed in?
Correct.
Because if we're paying for it, then we should have an input on where it goes. We've been crying out for development on the south sides of our community. Don't give me new committees that's going to sit here and talk about what issues are facing and plaguing our Black communities when you can look at different sections in our community and see the inequity.
Clearly.
Yeah. We don't have time for that. What we want is to be treated equally with respect, with dignity, and to be given the same consideration and treatment as other sections of the town. So I do tell everybody, please pay attention at what is going on. If you can't go to the city commission meetings, tune in on the videos. If you can't watch it on the videos, make sure you get the minutes and find out what went on. And if you can, there's a lot of advisory committees. If you can get on those and make sure that you can make a change, definitely get there. Because when the city hears your voice, when the county hears your voice, when government in the state legislature hear your voice, they make changes. But when we're quiet, it makes the fight even stronger. Like I said, I just thought about our summer. We spent all summer marching here in Tallahassee about the police. Where's all those people? I asked them, those issues have not been fixed. Where did we go? Where are the doctors that had that big march in the Capitol? We can't be doing the feel good. I've done the feel good for so long that I'm sick and tired of it.
Well, That was the premise of my statement, right? You, as we stated again, even the shootings across the country, even the violence brought into other communities, i.e., the Asian communities, right? Yeah, we need to stop. Yeah, we're praying for you. But until you make some changes,
you gotta make changes.
Until you put some things in law, that's the only way people understand it, right? So when we see wrong, we got to confront it at the door, right? We know that's wrong. Let's confront it. So until that happens, you're gonna have this constant what they call it, recycled or constant,
we honestly continue this cycle because we are not learning or changing from our history. And so it just continues to cycle and cycle and cycle and cycle. It's in your personal life and whatever life you have. If you don't learn and change from the history, then it will continue to repeat itself. But I also wanted to ask this question. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, all the stuff you're supposed to do. If we get a conviction, a guilty verdict, what does that mean? What does that mean to the movement? What does it mean to policy? What is it gonna say?
I start with this. Be careful that you don't celebrate too early.
Right.
Conviction is just the common sense of what should happen because it was a murder and it's plain out there. That is what should happen if America is going to turn around and say, we're going to say that Black Lives do matter and we're going to do the right thing and we're going to hold officers who go against the standard and go against policy responsible. However, remember that there are now courts that have been filled with and you hate to talk about the judiciary in a way, but we had a president unlike any other this last 4 years, and he put a lot of people in there that were probably not qualified in these judicial appointment seats, and they got zipped through Congress. It was like a pay for play type thing. You was a Republican, you got appointed, and they're stuck there. And so now, when you get individuals there, sometimes you question: are you voting on the facts, or are you voting based on your party values? And so that scares me because I heard it in passing. Someone say, even if he's convicted, give it about 18 months, and I'm pretty sure you have a strong possibility that there's going to be some sort of reversal on the appellate level, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to hit a very conservative judge on the appellate level all over the place because they dominate the bench. I think when they looked at it, I think Donald Trump only appointed 7 or 8 minorities. And then the rest of the individuals that he appointed were white, and they were all conservative. So that changes the values and the mindset and the thought pattern of the court. And so again, you can only do what we know to do, and that is to keep our faith in God. This is a praying family. This is a family that is their roots. When they don't know what else and they can't do anymore, they look up to their help, which is God. And everybody is just praying that justice is done, and that we all know that even if justice is not served here on earth, that one day all of us will have to meet our maker and answer for our actions. And so that's kind of what you take comfort in. But, for now, we have to do what we have to do. And that is to keep the pressure on because George isn't here anymore. And it's up to us to keep his name, his memory, and his legacy alive, because even for his youngest daughter, Gianna, we have to continue to fight and to advocate for her, because I think one of the most gut-wrenching feelings is to sit there and to try to explain to her why she keeps seeing photographs of her dad every television show that she looks at, trying to break it down and find a way to understand what happened to her dad. Those are the questions. And I don't think anybody in this room had an answer to give to her. So what we do is we find toys and things to keep her distracted. But my question is, how long can we keep doing that?
How old is she?
She's 6 years old.
So yeah, and it goes back to, again, to my point. You know, we're looking at the next generation, right? Rodney King was generations ago, but now here's a new generation that's still fighting that same fight. The Civil War was generations ago, slavery generations ago, but we're still fighting the same fight until we start doing, not just praying now. And I'm a praying man, but I'm praying that we, number one, start getting into the office, getting into the voting box, getting the right people. You said it earlier, the right people in place, not in terms of just ensuring that I get my way, but that justice is served, that right is right and that wrong is wrong. If you did it, you did it. Let's get it out the way and move on to the next. America has an opportunity now to change and to get better. My biggest problem is not if he gets convicted, going back to if he doesn't get convicted.
I was just about to say that. What happens then?
I'm just praying for America that we don't just explode into these streets. And you know, we are now looking for a better way, because regardless of how this case goes, we need to move into the direction of voting the right people in, people who are going to put policies in place to put the people who do this type of stuff. We don't have to go through a whole trial for this, right? If there was policies in place, automatically you're going to jail. Automatically you lost your pension. Automatically you get penalized. But because we don't have that, here we are today.
You know, and friend, I saw John's comment that just came in through one of the viewers, and you know, to his comment, you say, I think that in this generation, we, especially a lot of our young people, we grew up and we've been told, wait your turn, turn. You know, oh, don't run because this person's not done yet and they're not doing it enough for our community. I think that we need to start going against the grain. We need to stop going to the table and begging for crumbs, and we need to actually pull up a seat. We need to start holding our elected officials accountable to say that if you cannot go and represent us when you come to our churches and parade in our communities and ask for our votes, then perhaps we need to go to the table and ensure that the agenda gets done. You know,
I like Georgia, who's talking about big business don't come into politics. What you talking about? You just took the money from all of these major corporations, and now you tell them don't say anything. Again, we need to vote like we did, and I'm hoping that this past election and what's going on right now brings to light what they were doing in the dark. They were doing this in the dark for generations. Now it's brought to the light. So I'm hoping that people who are on the conservative side start to really question the people that they voted in.
You know, and I think, you know, you have to, even with these last 4 years, a lot of people have some self-reflection to do because they have to look themselves in the mirror. And you know, sometimes you wonder, how can some individuals sleep with themselves? Because it didn't matter. You know, growing up, I grew up in a very conservative town of Martin County, Florida, but there was a respectability that didn't matter about the political party. There was differences of opinion, but we all had some common values and decency and the way that we treat each other. You know, for me, I'm looking at our local government and I see some good things going on, but then I ask the question, why is it only 3 individuals there and 2 commissioners are always missing? It sends a message, because you can't talk to me about unity and you're a leader and you look and there's 3 people present and 2 missing. You know, a leader, that's part about leadership people don't understand. A leader has to bring the divide together. A leader needs to learn how to find common ground. A leader needs to know when to give up on some issues and compromise so that everybody can benefit. You know, we will never get anywhere and we will never make progress when we become so divided that we can't even come together on basic humanity. You know, and I think, you know, I tell individuals, you know, we went down and every time someone says, you know, defund, someone says, oh, defund the police, everybody gets mad and says, oh, we don't like that term. And they're saying rebrand the police. Like, look, don't let individuals confuse us as if you don't know what they're talking about. There's no need for a Blue Lives Matter, because you already understand that when people say Black Lives Matter, they didn't say that the police lives didn't matter. What they're saying is we don't want to be abused and we want you to be more held accountable. So instead of just walking up and saying, hey, my brother, I understand what you're going through. Hey, my sister, I understand what you all are going through, even though I don't experience that. And I'm going to do my best and my part to meet you at that. You create this counter movement of Blue Lives Matter to suggest that Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter is now two movements against each other. You know, we're worried about those that are being impacted the most. That's what the whole movement is about. And so, you know, for me, I look at it took the death of George Floyd for major corporations such as airlines and coffee shops to say, you now have permission to wear a Black Lives Matter pin on your shirt because now we get it. And for some of us, you know, I don't know for that, but being Black, George Floyd's death is something that we have experienced in our community almost every single day. And I'm glad America has finally said, wake up. You know, but we need to start holding everybody responsible. You know, I think I was traveling with some individuals in our entourage when we were going to the trial, and two of them happened to be white, and I was just very moved by one of the gentlemen when they were, you know, asking questions about Black Lives Matter. And he said, you know, what this means is not that, you know, they hate us because of our skin color. What it means is that we need to have conversations within individuals in our, you know, our community, within our race, to begin to help them understand what somebody else goes through in a different race. Because there are a lot of people that just, I believe, genuinely don't know, and they genuinely can't understand because they were fortunate to be blessed in a life of privilege where maybe they lived in gated communities and they weren't harassed and the police were very nice, and they just don't understand, well, what is this Black Lives Matter movement? But like I told you, in order for you to understand, you have to get out of these offices, you have to get out of these gated communities, you have to go into the communities where it makes you nervous a little bit. You know, I walked down the streets of 38th in Chicago. I seen no law enforcement there. And I asked the people, well, where's law enforcement? You know, I've been here for almost like 2 hours. Law enforcement doesn't come anymore. So now we have streets that don't have law enforcement, and that's not the solution.
That's what John
we have an obligation. And I think that this is one thing that I one of Mr. Crump's co-counsels and our team member, Antonio Romanucci, did a wonderful job of not only orchestrating a civil settlement, but he had demands attached with that civil settlement that we wanted the city of Minneapolis to meet to make that community better. And then when we're done, we're not just going to leave that community ravaged and just go on. You know, this is going above and beyond what is called of you as a civil attorney. Now you're working in the community and you're investing back into the community. The family announced a $500,000 to go a fund to go back into that same community that was most impacted, the same community that gets profiled, in hopes that we will leave that community a much better place than what we found it. And so again, you know, I'm just prayerful for the city of Minneapolis that they rise to the occasion, that they turn from these ways, and that the police department really cleans up its act and begins to serve the citizens. Because again, when all these lights and cameras go away, it's the stories of the business owners and the citizens who say, don't be fooled by this act. You know, we were contacted a week before this thing happened, but we've been complaining for months. And those are where my heart goes out to.
Yeah, you know, the fact, the things that we don't get to see, the things that the murders and the harassment and this and that and the other that we don't get to see, the years of not having cell phones, and all of that, you know, whatever. And I don't know whether other people feel this way, but even as a Black woman, sometimes if a cop car pulls up behind me, I have a moment of anxiety. I
That's
have a
that
moment of
PTSD right
what
there.
happened, you know,
Right.
and it's like, and then I hate myself for feeling that way. Like, why should I feel that way? But then it's like, it's valid. My feeling is so valid because I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if this is a good cop or a bad cop. I don't know, you know, whatever. I don't know if because I'm pulling in Chick-fil-A and he pulling in Chick-fil-A and he just going to Chick-fil-A. He not pulling me over. But just the whole trauma and anxiety of it all, you know.
Absolutely.
And so,
and you know, and I think that in your note, I think it shows when we work together the progress that we can make. One of the things that I was most proud of when I was NAACP president over this summer with the issues that we had in the NAACP is we brought the protesters together with our city government, and they started working together. We didn't get all the demands met, but one of the initial steps that we did accomplish is that we started with our protesters working with our police department. And they were in the process of developing a mobile application that, from what I've been told, is on its way out pretty soon. But that mobile application will allow citizens in Tallahassee to wirelessly use their smartphones to contact a supervisor if they feel uncomfortable in a situation and give real-time location back to the department that someone is requesting an additional officer because they feel uncomfortable. And hopefully that will lead to lives being saved. Again, when we work together, we can get progress made, but it comes with a willingness to listen and to not lock and shut people out of government, especially people that have differences of opinion. You know, I remember one day, you know, and when you're in public life, you always get these nasty messages that people send to you, and people grow up with these misconceptions. And it just happened to be this white man that had this misconception about the NAACP. Unbeknownst to many, the NAACP was founded by a lot of white individuals, but that's a fact that a lot of people don't understand. And so I got this very nasty email about the history of the NAACP being a race-baiting organization or anything like that. And, you know, I could have responded in a different ways, like some of the officials in the email thread were responding to him, but I just reached out. I said, hey, you know, I'm a new president here. I don't know if you've ever been invited to come to the meeting. I would invite you to come and find out for yourself, because I think that the image that you have of the NAACP is completely wrong. And you will never know if you don't take the chance to come out of this bubble that you're in and come and see what the organization is about. And instantly, you know, it was crazy to me, because he went from calling me out of my name to now saying, oh, I apologize, Dr. Marcelin. And I'm like, you know, it was just the level of respect just was like a shock level to me because of how people are misconceived. So I think that we all have to do better by taking the opportunities when we don't have crises in our community to bridge the gap, because crisis eventually will find itself in every city. But the question is, would you have already put the policies in place? How are you going to break the news to your community? Do you understand what the expectations is of your community? Do you understand how do you help relay updates about trauma in your community? These are things that even here in Tallahassee, we learned about the shooting. It wasn't about the shooting itself. It was not about the individuals getting killed. It was about the lack of Black people. It was about Black individuals dying, particularly Black males. And we weren't getting any updates from our city and local government. You didn't know what the investigation was, whether it was still at the police department or at the hands of the state attorney. And so we needed to come together and communicate those updates to individuals. And we failed to do that, which caused tension to unnecessarily grow in our community. And so I didn't just leave those issues. We got with the state attorney. We had meetings about that. And I said, hey, this issue is already, you know, done. And the fallout and the negativity and the negative press that has come upon the city because of it, that was because we were not prepared. But what I am here for is to say this will happen again, unfortunately. And when it does, will we be prepared to answer the call and respond accordingly and do a better job and to represent the great city of Tallahassee the way that it is? And so I hope that those conversations, even though I'm no longer in office, stuck with those officials, and that the next time that this happened, we don't look back in Tallahassee and see the image that we were all ashamed to see and the way that we were being broadcasted across the world.
Well, you know, Adner, it's not just Tallahassee. As you said, again, it's around the world, specifically the United States, since we're talking about George Floyd tonight. But there's a thing that I teach in my leadership class, right? We all are leaders. And the biggest thing that a leader should have is responsibility. And with responsibility, there's two parts to that. You have the ability, so you should respond. We all have the ability to do something when something's wrong, to say something when something's wrong. We have the ability, so we must respond. And the response is not only prayer, right? There's so many other things that we can do. And you named so many tonight. And that's why I started off tonight by saying, keep up the good work. It's not over. Unfortunately, you're going to be on the road a lot more. And that's what we need. But hopefully the message that we're stating tonight happens. Sure. We have more leaders who step up and they are now more responsible. They have the ability. They just need to respond.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think too with the chief of police and all of those people admitting that this was wrong. Yeah. Because sometimes we don't change it. Some people will not change if they don't think they did nothing wrong. Correct. Or they may do a little something to just make you happy right now, but they're going right back to that behavior. But knowing and admitting that they have done something wrong, that is another thing that will bring about the change. And so now you have said that this man was wrong. And so you should be looking within your police force for them not to be doing this.
Absolutely.
You know, for them, for your own policies, never mind the state government, just how you run your ship. Yes. Just how you run your ship should be changing. Absolutely. You know, just how you do things within your we shouldn't even have to wait for us to come out and vote. No. Correct. Change within. Change what you're doing within. Don't wait for the mayor, the president, or whoever to make some policy. Not saying that policy don't need to be made. I ain't saying that. But until then, it started with you. So let's get it started.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lisa, I love it. I mean, again, we don't gotta wait for greatness. We can start right now, today. This could be a great moment with today, the police chief coming out to saying, you know what? We have recognized that he was wrong. We fired him, and these are the actions that we're gonna take. We don't need to wait for somebody to tell us to do it. Although, again, I feel that you could not have put it in such a elegant. I love it. I mean,
I think you did the closing word there. I don't think you need to say anymore. I think we have hit it all. That's all. We're ready to go home.
Listen, and our hour has been well spent. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. You know, I have his number, and I'm like texting him like, "Can you come on?"
Well, you all like, sure. I was like, yes. You really missed Tallahassee. It's really a great place. You know, even though I was there, you know, you really appreciate what you have when you go somewhere else and you see people don't have it. You know, as good as we do. And so certainly, like I said, I'm always glad to come on and be with you all and definitely engage in that community. And I did see a question from Sandra on what kind of pressure can a community
let's answer that one, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Put on police using. You know what I think, you know, to answer the question, I think that the Police Benevolence Association protects a lot of police associations. These unions protect their police officers, and sometimes that is the issue when you're trying to hold them accountable is that, you have to face the unions and make sure that you have that right. I do think that, continual training, but really taking swift and really strong actions against those who commit crimes, and I call them crimes, that's what they are, or they have misbehavior on the force against individuals based on race and economic status. When people see that, they have to stop it, because George Floyd didn't have to die because there were 4 other officers who at whatever point noticed that Derek Chauvin was breaking the law by keeping his knee on the neck that could have intervened and saved his life, because those officers had a duty to serve and protect George Floyd too.
Yeah.
And so, we won't go into the details because I think we have beat the horse down. But I will say, when you see something, you have to speak up. And when you see something, you have to take action. But also to the individuals, I think that as citizens, we need to also meet frequently with the elected officials, including our police chief, and let them know what they're getting right and what they're getting wrong. My police chief here knows that, hey, when you do something like, recreate our tempo program, giving people chances to get into law enforcement that normally wouldn't have that, I send a note and say, hey, I see you. I like that. This is a good image for our department. But when I don't see something that I like, he knows I won't hesitate to call as well. And I think that if we had more citizens, normal everyday citizens, policing our communities, our elected officials, our leaders, and being more vocal, they pay attention. You are the ones that will vote and keep them in office, and they respect your opinion, and that we need to not leave it to the same 3 or 4 people in our communities to speak up for everybody and the same 3 or 4 voices, but we all need to begin collectively raising our voices against injustice until we can finally live in a world where racial injustice is eradicated.
You are on mute.
I missed that. I would also add, because you brought up some great points, join other organizations like the NAACP, like, your Greek organizations. If you're not active, get active. Find ways to join in with a collective voice. If you feel your voice is not heard, join other voices, because again, we have power in numbers. And a lot of these organizations work together. So small or large, whatever you're doing is going to make a difference. And again, vote. I mean, out of all the things you could do, if you don't do anything else, vote.
All the elections, all of them. Listen, this has been really, really great. I appreciate you guys. Thank you, friends. I don't know what happened to JT. We lost him. Thank you, Adner, so much for hanging out with us. Appreciate you so much. I'll be texting again someday.
And I'll be here to answer for you all. Thank you all for the opportunity to come on and chat with you all.
Thank you.
We got to have you back after the trial.
We'll come back.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's one of the great things about this virtual platform is we can definitely keep up with what's current and what's going on and talk about it, because that's what we do on Kitchen Talk CTC.
Conversations that cook.
Yes, they do. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button or the like button or whatever buttons, all the buttons, just hit the button so you'll never miss another show. Thank you so much. We'll be right back here next week. And actually, next week, we have the topic already, friends. Guess what it is?
What is it?
Politics and the pulpits.
Ooh. Oh, my God. Yes,
that's a good topic. That's a great topic.
Hey, that's where it happens, in the pulpit. From the pulpit to the politics, to the politician. Shout out to Warnock for winning. We from the pulpit to the... Let me stop, man. Let me stop.
Don't get them started.
So good night, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week. Love you.